everybody. Welcome to another episode of Steel Rose's podcast. This podcast was created for women by women. We have a really phenomenal guest here with us this morning. I would like to introduce all the listeners to Catherine Canales. Catherine and I are linked professionally through LinkedIn. I have been a follower of hers and almost a fan. It's so cheesy to say, but a fan of Catherine's and the information that she puts out on LinkedIn. Catherine is a business development veteran. She's an advocate for coaching and training. She also has worked extensively in advocating for women's salary negotiation. And she is an author of a book to be released in the future. It's not funny, it's sexist. So Catherine, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Jenny. Thank you so much for having me here. I don't know if you can see it, but I'm blushing. You gave such a beautiful introduction. So thank you very much.
Of course. So Catherine, I have been, following you for a little while and there was a quote actually on your profile that really hit me. And it was actually part of the reason why I reached out, because I was like, okay, this woman, she knows that she has it. I'm gonna
yes, I'm curious which one it is.
It's in your about section, and I read it and I was like, I need to see if Catherine would come on the podcast. 10 years ago, I was pregnant with 2 young kids, divorcing and jobless, and my newly built house was for sale, all in 9 months. You might think that my life was falling apart, but I think it was falling into place. And as I read that out loud, I got chills, and because I read it, and I think that for me personally, I can resonate and relate there, because I've had situations where I felt like things were like totally falling apart, but I'm like, I have to keep going. Like, I think that something great will come from this. At some point, I always said to myself, at some point, I'm going to look back on this moment in time and think, I got through that and look at where I am today. So just amazing. So Catherine, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yes. So this is exactly how I feel right now. And I've been feeling like this for quite a while, actually. But it's true. 10 years ago was a very, very difficult moment in my life. I was going through a pretty ugly divorce, to be honest with you. And I had 2 boys already at the time. They were 7 and 5 years old. And the day that I drove to have an appointment with my lawyer to file for divorce, on the way back, so I was crying. I was driving, I was crying. 10 years of marriage, and I was just coming back, from disappointment with my lawyer. So I was devastated. And then suddenly as I was driving, I realized, it's like, Catherine, you haven't had your period for I don't know how long. Because in the middle of the crisis, I had completely lost track. And I still even know in the highway, I live in Switzerland, in the Geneva area. I can tell you where I had this moment of realization, and I knew. So I stopped at the pharmacist, at the drugstore on the way back, but I knew already I was pregnant. So, so it didn't change the outcome. We were in,
right.
We were way too different. So I just, I started my 3rd pregnancy in the middle of the divorce. And let me just think. And probably, so 1 month before my son was, before I was due, I was actually on sick leave because I had so many panic attacks during the pregnancy. And I remember my doctor was telling me, Catherine, you have to get until 39 weeks. Hold on. And every month that I had my checkup, it was like 1 more month because it was a high risk.
That's wonderful.
Yes, it was a high risk pregnancy, and I was obviously very, very stressed, and it was a very, very difficult moment. And so 1 month before my baby was born, I got this surreal phone call. My boss initially said, I'd just like to check in with you and see how you're doing. He knew exactly everything that was going on because we had a good relationship. So I shared, about my divorce and all the issues that we were having. We had just finished, as you read in my bio, we had just finished building the house that we both designed together, and it was basically a 3-year process, and I had to put it for sale. So yes, go back to that story. So 7 p.m. I got this phone call from my boss, and I thought he's just just wants to check in and see how I'm doing. And then I realized we were going to have a completely different conversation when I spoke with him. And he said, we're very worried about your situation, and we understand that you don't want to go back to work, and you probably just want to relax and stay at home and look after your kids. So I couldn't believe what I was hearing, and I said, I don't know why in the middle of everything that is going on in my life, just not working. How is that going to make things better? And are you planning to pay me to stay at home? Because yes, in that case, I'm happy to do it. But I don't think that not having a job is going to, make anything easier.
It's not gonna make it less stressful.
So there's a sentence. There's something I love saying. Is like, I'm so confused. Can you just explain what's going on? Where are you coming from? Mm-hmm. And I forgot to say that he told me, oh, by the way, you're on loudspeaker. HR is online as well. So I was just I was completely not prepared. I thought we were going to have just a nice conversation, and then suddenly I found myself with HR trying to justify, what's my situation. And then both felt extremely uncomfortable, and then the discussion was cut very rapidly. They said very sheepishly, "Oh, we thought this is what you wanted, so sorry for that. So have a nice end of your pregnancy, and we talk soon." Yes. So, but it was a very, very powerful moment in my life, because my first reaction was to prove them that they were wrong. So I started collecting, looking at all the work that I had done for that company, and just writing reports and showing them how valuable I was, how much I had done for the company, how hard I worked. And I was really behaving, the good girl syndrome. And for the first week, I was obsessed with that. And then suddenly I stopped. And I thought, Catherine, this is crazy. This is silly. What are you doing this? And in that moment, this is where I realized that actually they had given me a huge power, which was really the power to negotiate my situation. The way they did it, they gave me so much leverage, and I decided to use that leverage. So instead of going back, I negotiated my departure. And that alleviated a lot of the financial burdens that I was facing at the time. And then I used my maternity leave to search for a new job. And the day that I was supposed to go back after my maternity leave, this is the day I started a completely different job in an amazing company with a 30% salary increase. And this
That's
was
fantastic.
The beginning of a very, very empowering journey. And so everything happened for the best at the end of the day.
It's interesting how pivotal that moment was, because I can track when I look back at like my personal and professional life, and I can track moments like that were so, like, at the time, like, mind-boggling, like, I don't think I can do this, to no, you can do this, and you're going to actually scale this, and you're going to actually, and I love what you said there, that like you for a week were like fighting it, and you're like, no, like this can't be, like, no, like I'm not going to, and then ultimately having that light bulb moment of, you know what, hold on a second, I can take this, and I'm going to make this into what I need it to be. And then from there, you've had all these other experiences that you might not have had if they were like, okay,
Absolutely.
you can come back. Right? Like that's what it sounds like. It sounds like from this moment, you were able to explore all these other things. Like coaching, for example. I think that you're very like passionate about coaching as well. And I think that's probably something you might not have gotten to do before.
Let's take a quick break.
Are you interested in podcasting but not sure where to start? My name is Jenny Benitez, and I'm here to help guide you through your podcast launch and maintenance. Check out the link in the episode description for Podcasting Unboxed, your comprehensive startup guide. I am very excited to work with you.
Yes, I think my life took a completely different direction. And I felt, I moved from a victim position to really feeling empowered. First of all, because I realized that I was able to be a single mom of 3 boys. And when I went back to work, my youngest one was 4 months old, a 5 years old, a 7 years old. And I was traveling a lot. And I managed to, I managed to do it all. So probably, not perfectly. And I had to make many sacrifices, especially for my kids, because being in business development means that you travel a lot. But at the other time, it gave me that the possibility of working from home the rest of the time, which that was 10 years ago. It was not a given that you could work from home. So I found just the right balance between traveling, having financial security, which for me it was so important, and then being with my kids as much as possible. So, and at the time, I live in quite a conservative country where women don't work, especially when their kids are young, and they definitely don't work full time. So I've been asked many inappropriate questions, and I can tell you one. When I moved after selling the house, I moved into an apartment which was okay, nice, but it was really nothing special. And the tenant who was leaving, he said, "Oh, Catherine, in the village, everyone is asking questions about what type of work do you do, because you work full time and you can afford this type of apartment." And again, I couldn't. Yes. So it's like, excuse me, I don't know what you mean, but I can work. I'm a grown-up woman, and so
that's crazy. That's crazy. Wow.
So
wow, that's wild. So, it's around the whole like those kinds of questions. It's crazy to me because I just recently was doing research like in the US on the feminist movement and like how things came to be, and I'm thinking like, oh, I'm gonna look at this and see like historical like 1800s stuff from way back that like, oh, that's when things were really bad. There's literally schools that just in the 90s, like in the 1990s, late 1990s, were still male only schools and would refuse to let women. And I'm like, this is insane. And there's this whole like, I mean, I going through the history of it, there's a whole thought behind it where like, I don't know what the date was for, but there was a Darwinian theory that women are the less smart and less strong gender because males go through more natural selection because they're in more dangerous situations. And because of that, they're like the ones who are alive today are like cream of the crop. And so women always get questioned and like kind of brushed off in a professional sense because like there's this underlying tone still in 2023 or 2024 when this airs that like women can't do quite the same kind of thing. And I'm very aggressive in my career, and it sounds like you and I would probably work well together because you are the same way. And I'm very aggressive, and if I bang on a door and I'm like, I want this next step, like, and I'm working for an agency. I've always worked in agencies, and whenever I get to a certain point, I'm like, all right, I've mastered this particular role I'm in. I'm ready. Like, let's go. Let's get me to the next level. And I have only ever once in my entire 17-year career been promoted one time. All of the leaps in my career was because, all of the leaps in my career was because I left. the agency that I was working for and moved on to something else, because every single time I went to whomever was managing me at the time and said, I'm ready for this. Here's my presentation of what I've done. Similar to like what, as you were telling me your story, I was reflecting on, I was working with this one agency for about 4 years, and I went to my boss and I had a whole spreadsheet and a presentation. I was like, I'm the highest revenue earner. I was doing business development at the time too. I was like, I'm bringing in the most money. This is my book of business. These are quotes from my clients. And he wouldn't promote me. He just wouldn't do it. He was like, well, we'll talk about it. Well, he kept saying, we'll see. And I was like, you're going to see Jenny going out the door because I won't stay here. And I'm very particular about that because, and I harp on that quite a bit because I think that women have this tendency to think like my work will speak for itself. And that's really not what goes on. And you do have to push the envelope. So I commend you on like what you've done. So I'm sorry I interrupted you a little bit, but like I commend you because you have to do that.
You have to do it. And it is called the Cinderella complex. Which is if you do everything the right way and if you please everyone and if you follow all the rules, someone will eventually notice it and will reward you for that. Mm-hmm. And that's something that maybe in fairy tales, there's the Prince Charming that is going to come and save you. But real life is quite different.
Again, fairy tale. Another.
Exactly. Yes. And this is what it's called the Cinderella complex. And this is why very often women are very, very capable and extremely hardworking, but they have this tendency of being afraid of speaking up because they think they're going to be labeled as difficult, as demanding, as, demanding, or at least the best word.
Yeah.
So they just wait for the company or the boss to propose it kindly to them, and then finally someone will see how good we are. And this is actually something that is harming our careers immensely.
Mm-hmm. Oh, 110%. I do a lot of like, I am in touch with a lot of women that I've made contacts with over the years. And a lot of younger women that are in their mid 20s, late 20s, and they're earlier in their careers. And I always talk about this extensively with them, that and like the salaries, because you're never really, unless you ask, you're not going to get what you're asking. You have to ask the question. Now, there was this one technique that I figured this out at one point. My kids were little and it was the financial strain because I had my son in 2016 and my twins in 2017. So it was like mayhem. Wow. And while I was on maternity leave with my twins, I knew that I needed to switch jobs and I needed to get a higher paying role. And so I started interviewing with this one particular agency, and the HR person said to me, she was like, well, what's your salary expectation? And I didn't want to go too low, but I wasn't sure what to ask. So what I said at the time was, I was like, well, what is the range for this role? And I let her tell me, and then I picked the number that was right dab in the middle. And I was like, oh, well, this is where I am right now. Now, I'll admit I was inflating myself a little bit there because that is just naturally how I was like, there's no way I'm going to tell them my current salary because I don't want a lateral move here. I want to scale. And I've told that technique to men and women. And everyone has always said to me, like, I never thought to do that. But I'm like, because if you tell them, you might be lowballing yourself and then ultimately not really getting what you deserve. Because how many times do people take on new roles and then are like, oh man, I should have asked for more money? And Absolutely. Women especially, I'm sure it happens all the time.
Mm-hmm. So a couple of comments on that. So first of all, now there are pay transparency rules in place, and you can check online if you want. I can show you the resources where you can see, because it's in the US, it's based on states, and actually here in Europe, it just got it was just voted by the European Parliament in March 2023. But basically what it means is that a company cannot ask you for your salary history anymore. And they cannot ask you anymore how much that you want to, what are your salary expectations. They have proactively to provide you with the salary range that they have for the job. And they also have to basically provide you with if it's an existing role, what is the salary history for that role? Because what you're doing, as you said, if you're moving into a new role, your previous company, your previous role has nothing to do with the new one. So what should that be based on?
Nope.
Why should your new role be based on the previous one? So, and I think your technique is perfect. I always said, okay, can you please, I'm curious to see what is the salary range that you have in mind? And companies have budgets. So they never post a job without having an idea how much you're going to pay employees. So
of course,
no one should feel uncomfortable about asking that question and just asking, I'd rather know what are you proposing? What is the salary range that you have in mind? And take it from there.
Yeah.
There are different schools.
That's such
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm. But I like that.
I was going to say, it was the
company to come with the range, because sometimes, you have a good surprise and it's way more than what you expect. And I said, okay, perfect. So you don't want the company to anchor themselves on a number that is way too low. Mm-hmm.
I have noticed that the jobs that I'm seeing, like that get posted and everything, I actually have noticed that they do put the range in now, and they didn't do that before. Like I know that that's new, because I remember growing up in the industry, like I started in my career in 2007, and it was like a guessing game, and I'd have to go onto like Glassdoor or like whatever and Google things and try to determine like what the most appropriate range was. And then there was also the line that's like, this is the salary range, low to high, and then it's based on your skill set. So the other part to it too, that I've noticed amongst some of my friends currently, that they don't really do themselves justice when they're writing up their resume or when they're talking about their experience levels. Because, it's one thing to just be like, oh, well, I schedule all the calls, but it's like, okay, yeah, but that's like a logistics, you have logistics experience. If you're, well-versed in maintaining calendars and, having to like deal with all that, like there's a whole line that you can highlight there, so it's not just like, oh, I schedule meetings, but you are really managing calendars across clients. That, there's so much more that you can say about it. And I think that gets lost a lot too. I work in communications and marketing, and using your words, it is such something to me that I'm so passionate about, like communicating
Absolutely.
and using your words and using the right words. I mean, you can just totally, like, you can change a whole phrase and it's makes people look at you totally differently.
Yes, we have
which actually goes in line
tell
with something
our
else that,
stories.
yeah.
Sorry, but yes, I completely agree with you, and it takes time, but it's so important to write actually our job history in a way that really elevates us, and that we're trying to align, as powerfully as possible to, what are the company goals, what are they trying to achieve. So there's yes, it's a lot that can be said around that.
I know that you're a partner with Noble Manhattan for certified coaching training. So are you yourself a coach, and then you train other coaches?
So I don't train other coaches, but I'm part of the Noble Manhattan family as their distributor here in Switzerland. And yes, I've done my coaching certification with Noble Manhattan. This is how I came across them. And I am really passionate about coaching, because I believe that coaching skills can really support women into their leadership journey. And in general, I think we can be so much stronger professionals if we hone those coaching skills. So either, of course, it also, I also do, I do more mentoring. I wouldn't want, when it comes to salary negotiation and, career advisory, but I used coaching skills at work, and it's something that really transformed the way I approach job situations, how I manage my team, how I manage clients, because you have to learn, the listening skills, the questioning skills, just the communication. How do you see everything? You just see things through a different filter. So this is how I decided to work with them, because I'm such a big believer, and I hope more women would actually embrace coaching, not necessarily and not exclusively for becoming coaches, but really to become better at the job at their jobs, actually.
I think there's a lot of coaches that have come recently out, where they're putting themselves out there. I interviewed in season 1, I interviewed 2 coaches. And one of them, I actually will ping her randomly. She's one of them, Brooke, is so her and I will message her and be like, hey, I'm scared to do this. What do you think? And I'll just kind of stuff like that. And she helps me out. And the thing that I don't think people realize, because I think there's almost a stigma around oh, you need a coach. You can't figure things out for yourself. But it's not that. It's more of a almost, I mean, at least from what it seems like to me, is almost like a sounding board, a sanity check, or somebody that's going to help you. If you are confused about something, I was really nervous about a particular podcast episode, and I messaged my friend Brooke and was like, hey, I'm kind of scared to do this, but can you take a listen? Give me your thoughts, and she just sort of helped to ground me and was like, is this what you're going for? Because this is really great. And I'm like, that's what I'm going for. Okay, let's do this. And on a personal level too, I've seen, mom coaches coming out where it's if you're a stay-at-home mom and you just need somebody that's going to help you sort of maintain some level of sanity or give you tips, or it's exhausting being a woman. I'm going to be honest. We have a lot of things that we manage and maintain. And I mean, Catherine, it's exhausting. And to have somebody that is going to take a step back and look at something from a non-personal perspective is a tremendous level of support. I'm a huge advocate and fan, obviously.
Yes, no, I fully agree with you. And so having someone, as you mentioned, as a sounding board, someone who can also challenge you and help you grow. So if you set up specific goals for you, someone who's going to help you, to be accountable, or who's going to, stretch yourself. This is probably what I love the most about coaching, is that it's continuous growth and continuous looking into the future and having a direction where you're going, because it's very easy just to lose track of what you want to accomplish and just get very comfortable with everyday life, and one falls into automatic into how do you say automatisms very easily.
Yeah.
If you because just life happens, and work and kids and all the rest. So for me, it's been very useful just to drive everything that I want to drive forward, and to have someone who's supporting me, that I can also share the struggles. I'm a very I always tell everyone, you have to be confident, you have to believe in yourself. Digital imposter syndrome, but it's I'm suffering from that too. So I need someone who reminds me. Actually,
me too,
the things
Catherine.
that I'm telling everyone. So, I have a wonderful partner, Dominic. He's a career coach himself, and he's actually very often the one who's like, Catherine, what would you tell one of your clients? And I'm like, yes, you're right. So he helps me actually see things and put things into perspective when I have those moments of doubt.
Yeah.
And it's so important to have someone like this around you.
My partner does the same thing. And actually, Catherine, I want to share something with you too, because you mentioned imposter syndrome. All of us have that. I also have that. And this is a little bit funny, because now we're I want to tell this to you, but before every guest recording, I get super nervous. And I will tell my husband, I'm like, I'm just nervous. Like, who am I? Like really, this is what comes into my mind. I'm like, who am I to be interviewing these phenomenal women? Like I'm like nobody. And he's always like, but Jenny, they want to be on your podcast. Like they're saying yes. Like you obviously are doing something right here. But it's crazy because like we have a whole season 1 of episodes, and the people that I've reached out to for season 2 to come on as guests, like including yourself, have been very like excited and like gracious and like, what can we talk about? Like everyone's really excited about it, but I still get nervous. And I've done broadcast productions professionally. I've done these massive productions for I work in pharmaceuticals. So I've done these massive, massive projects. So you would think that I would be so used to doing this at this point that it'd be like natural, easy peasy. And I hope it comes off that way, because in reality, inside, I'm like so nervous, and I have to like make sure that I have time to mentally prepare myself. And that's all part of that whole imposter syndrome thing that I'm still trying to beat back.
Everyone has imposter syndrome. Everyone. And men too, not to the same extent, but men too. And the way I started to see this is that when we feel imposter syndrome, it's actually really good, because it means that we're getting out of our comfort zone, and it means that we're growing. So rather than seeing this as something negative, it's like, okay, this is the inner voice that is really exciting, because we're doing something that, we're stretching our wings. And it's this, and this is the symptom. This is, the how can I say, the sign that we're growing. And otherwise we wouldn't care. If it was just something that, that had no significance, no importance, it would be just, right, okay, let's do it. But when we are feeling imposter syndrome, it's because we are growing. So this is how now this is how I explain it to myself and explain it to others. And when I feel imposter syndrome, because I was also nervous about our podcast, then I said, Catherine, this is amazing. This is such a good opportunity. And then I talked to myself, and it's just so common for everyone. And I also noticed it's something that was very interesting as I started supporting women in negotiation. There are some women who reach out to me, and they are very high in their careers, VPs, executive directors. And initially I was like really confused. It's like, why do they need my help? I mean, they've had a tremendous career. They are so confident. And for me, I couldn't believe it when I was talking to them. Some of them, how insecure they were, despite everything that they achieved. And then I said, yes, so I'm interviewing for this new role, and we have to discuss about negotiation, and I want to tell them. And they start telling me, what they have achieved. And they said, how should I set it? And I said, well, exactly just like you told me, it's just perfect. You don't need And the way I see my role is actually for women to realize that they don't need me, that they are perfectly capable to negotiate their salaries and to stand up for themselves and to communicate their worth. And I'm totally unnecessary, but they have to come through that realization. So this is what I actually makes me really, really happy when people then feel empowered, women feel empowered again to communicate their worth, and when they realize about their worth, because it's always been there, but they just feel so insecure.
Yeah. Well, you're helping them to almost like wake up and really think about like, I count myself fortunate that over the last year, I took a course with Kathy Heller called Abundance Ever After. And the course is really focused on women. Like I think there's some men that come into it, but it is predominantly women, and it's women of all ages come into this course. And it was like a 12-week class that I took over the summer. And it literally changed everything, how I was approaching everything, because it actually talked about imposter syndrome. It talked about, feeling uncomfortable is actually a signal of growth. And what I wanted to share with you is that there's actual like biology behind the feeling uncomfortable, because your brain waves start to get set into a particular pattern, and that's like your everyday life, right? And then when you try to, so it's used to that. It's used to wake up, brush your teeth, like there's a pattern there, right? And there's a pattern also of feelings of stress, anxiety, happiness, like there's a pattern. When you try to step out of that pattern, which is, when you're growing, you feel the imposter syndrome, and then you get the anxiety and you start to question yourself because you are changing the actual pattern of how your synapses are firing in your brain.
Mm-hmm.
So your brain is saying to you, like, this doesn't feel like what I'm normally used to feeling like. Let's go back and continue to do what we're used to. And that's where people, if they don't know that, will be like, you're right. This is probably my intuition telling me not to do this. And that's not really it. It's really because you are about to make this leap into something greater and you're just rewiring your brain. So there's like all this, it's very interesting to me. Like I think it's so cool because it's like, there's actual legitimate biology behind this. And if you could just get over that hump, you could really scale. And like, I mean, like what you've done, like you've explored all these different avenues and you still have your main like profession, but you have all these other things that you do that are just like amazing. To me, they're amazing. I want you to
Thank you. Yes, well, it's very interesting the way it happened because I work in business development, and I'm also a sales director, so I manage sales. I manage a sales team, and throughout my career, I started observing, differences when I was recruiting, how women and how men would negotiate, and it was very eye-opening to, when I was negotiating with them, how women positioned themselves and how men positioned themselves. Mm-hmm. And for me, it was like, okay, girl, sometimes I just wanted to say, okay, can we just hold on? This is not the hiring manager talking, but the woman is like, what are you doing? Why are you downplaying all your achievements? What are you saying? Or whatever you want to pay me, I'm fine. I just want the job. No, I don't want to be too greedy. And some women, I really wanted to shake them up. And I said, this is not how you negotiate. So this is how it started, where I was actually, disappointed or sad that women would not take the opportunity to negotiate better and to acknowledge their worth. And when I was doing my coaching certification, I decided to focus in this. Like this, I could also use all my commercial experience, and this is how it all started. But it came in. What I'm trying to say, that it started with the realization that some women, I'm not saying everyone, of course, but some women really, really struggle to stand up for themselves. And I observed it myself. So, and again, it's just a matter of having the confidence to assert what we want and just saying what we want. Because what's the worst that can happen? And so yes.
Exactly, though.
Right?
I had coached, I had a couple years ago. Yeah, honestly, 100%. Like, what are they going to say? No? Okay. All right, cool. One of the things that I actually started doing too, and I started doing this about 5 or 6 years ago, anytime I was professionally about to do something, that I was questioning and being like, oh, is this like right? Like, should I do this? I would take a minute. This is going to sound a little weird. I would take a minute and be like, well, if I was a man, would I be questioning this? Because statistically, men will apply to any job. It doesn't matter if they have the skills or not. They will apply to the job because to them, they're like, I deserve this. I can do this. I can kill it. Whereas women need to see that they are like a 99% match to the job. So they won't apply to a job unless they see that there are 1-to-1, like, oh, I have all these skills. Now I can apply. And I started putting myself in positions where I'm like, if I was a man, I probably wouldn't even question what I'm doing here. Let me just go ahead and do this. And I shared that insight with a woman that I'm friends with now that we met professionally, and I was mentoring her for a long time. And I shared that thought with her the one time, and it like blew her mind. She was like, I don't think I would be questioning this. I'm like, then do it. Like, go for it. Like, what, like you said, what is the worst that's going to happen? They're going to just say no, and then you move on. Like, okay, that's not going to tear you down. Look at how far you've come in your life. Like, come on. I do want to ask you, because I don't want to forget, you do have a book that I already pre-ordered. So I know you have a book that's going to be released eventually. So it's called, It's Not Funny, It's Sexist. So you're in the throes right now of writing the book and pulling it together.
Yes. The idea is to have the book published by the end of Q1 2024. And what I'm in the process of doing right now, I'm speaking with women from all over the world. So I've been interviewing women from, Europe, Asia, the US, different industries, different stages in the careers. So I put an announcement on LinkedIn if anyone wants to share, what has been their experience in casual sexism, or casual sexism specifically, in the workplace. That I would be very interested to hear about what was their experience. Also, allies, or sometimes also men. Actually, have a couple of interesting experiences from men that were in sexist situations. And so right now, I'm just collecting all the stories. And the way the book is going to look like is like on one. So initially, yes, I want to share the stories of the women and what has been my experience with casual sexism in the workplace throughout my whole career. So I have 25 years of corporate career, and I've seen it, everywhere, unfortunately. And then I also my goal is also to make it very practical, because one of the common themes is we don't know how to react. In those specific moments, we kind of freeze. And this is what everyone has been, it's been so eye-opening, because I didn't know it was just how I experienced certain episodes, if it was personal or if it was a trend. And actually, in most cases, there is like this freeze. It's like, this is so shocking that I don't even know how to respond. So I'm sharing a few guidelines. Okay, this is what you can say, because and just to help, because if you have those sentences in the back of your head, it's much more easy to react when you are confronted with them. And also giving some guidelines to companies. And I know there's a lot of things that exist already, but I just wanted to make the book as comprehensive as possible, so that we can tackle this issue that is, unfortunately, it's a poison, and I think there's something that has to be done, and this was maybe this is my personal contribution, because I think there are many episodes in my career that I regret that I didn't say anything at the time, and and I like especially women at the beginning of their career, for them to be able to approach these situations, because when you gain in maturity, or when you gain, when you have more work experience, then maybe you are, it gets easier to manage certain situations. You're also less scared of retaliation, which is also the number one reason why women are not saying anything. And actually the biggest reason why women are not saying anything is because it's so embedded in our culture. We are bombarded by casual sexism. So there's a little bit this feeling of defeat. What's the point? It's not going to change. I'm just going to expose myself. They're just going to think that I'm crazy, that I'm difficult, that I'm a Me Too. So it's been really, really eye-opening to have all these discussions. and to see how women have been, what have been their experiences across the planet. And it's kind of depressing, to be honest with you, because I heard some horrible stories, and where they had to carry the consequences and they had to leave, or they will ultimately let go whenever they spoke up. I have not come across yet like a positive resolution where the perpetrator had to suffer the consequences. And I've spoken with dozens of women. It was always them leaving, being fired, or these are the two options that I've seen so far. Mm-hmm.
This book is so important because, and I say this from a place of like when my cousin and I came together, wanted to do this podcast, it was really based around like topics like this that really aren't talked about. And part of the problem here is, I think that there's a lot of shame that goes along with this, because if you experience something sexist at work, especially if it's an aggressive situation, the woman almost always will feel like, I did something here. What did I do that prompted this behavior? And you didn't. Like, and the unfortunate thing is, as you said, like, especially young women who are early in their careers, they don't have the confidence level or feel like they can stand up and be like, this isn't right. This is a problem, because you will get branded as a problem and there's stigma around it. And then maybe that means that you get passed over for projects that you want because, somebody that, the aggressor maybe is on these projects and they're not getting fired. So you now have to face your aggressor on these projects. Like, and then you're put into this position of like, you are made to feel awkward. And I have daughters, and you should hear, Catherine, the way that I talk to my daughters are only 6, but I make sure like I'm giving them some kind of information now, in the 6-year-old world that like is going to stay with them for the rest of their lives, because this is a huge problem. It's still happening. It's not going anywhere. And your book is going to be one of these things that helps to change the conversation. We have to talk about this, because if we don't talk about it, it's just going to keep happening. Our daughters, our sisters, like our family, people, your friends are going to go through these situations, and then they're going to feel like they're at fault when they really aren't. No one should feel that way. And it's just incredibly important. So I applaud you for really going down this journey of pulling these stories together, because you're right. Like 20-something Jenny would have probably benefited from having a couple of lines in the back of my head of how to react to a situation, because you're not prepared for it. You're going in thinking, oh, I'm here to work and do my job. And then these kinds of things happen. And it's like, well, are you not looking at me as a professional then? Like what? So it's just, there's so much to it. So I think it's so wonderful that you're doing that book.
Thank you.
Catherine, do you have any? Yeah, of course. Go ahead.
No, and I have 3 boys. So I'm also writing it for my boys, because I want for them to be better allies in the future. And sometimes I hear my boys talking to their friends, and I'm shocked, and I'm like, what did you just say? I don't want any of that here, because and then I said, you cannot be my sons. But I see how much they are bombarded by sexism. So it's everywhere. And sometimes I even how can I say that? Even sometimes I had to do a lot of work to identify in which areas in my life or in where I was seeing things through the lens of sexism. Even as a woman, unfortunately, because there are lots of bias that we have through education, and we need to break them down. So just having that level of awareness, it's probably the first step. But there's there's a lot that has to be done. And I think that what is really dangerous about casual sexism, it's casual. So it's not like a physical assault where it's a no-brainer that, yes, of course, there's going to be consequences. But, there's microaggressions that minorities experience on a constant basis. The fact that we just say, oh, it's not a big deal, we were just joking, or, this is just, we were, just between friends. Don't take it, relax. It's like the thing when someone tells me relax, it's like what makes me jump to the roof.
Oh my God. That's like the worst thing that you could probably tell.
Yes. Just relax, take it easy, don't be so dramatic. It's like, is it one of those days, and things like that. And this is what is perpetuating it, because it's never a big deal. So, and
you corrected me, and I actually want to highlight this because I said it, and when you came in after me, I'm like, I feel like I need to note this. It's not just educating our daughters, it is educating our sons, because the only way it's going to really change, like, we can talk about this to death, but if we're not also teaching our boys, like, the appropriate way to speak and, like, not to say certain things, because I even see stuff in my son today, and to respect my little guy, my little 7-year-old has already picked up on the notion of women clean. And when I send the kids to their rooms to clean, he hangs out in his room until his sisters are done cleaning their room. And then he's like, come on, girls, help me clean my room. And he has them clean his room. And I always go in. I must, like, my husband must, he was like, Jenny, you get too worked up. But I always go in whenever this happens. And I'm like, girls, it's so nice of you to be nice to your brother, but you don't have to clean his room. You already did your responsibility. And I make it a point to, like, try to interject and point things out, because I'm like, I want you to have, girls, they need to know this isn't your job. Like, and it's like these little tiny things, and it's not, this isn't casual. I don't know if it would apply to casual sexism, but in my head, I'm like, I need him to be aware that he needs to be able to do this. This is not just something you throw to women. Like, you yourself need to do this, like, kind of thing. So both genders need to be aware and need to be educated on this, hands down.
And what was very interesting with the men that I spoke, Jenny, just if you want me to add something that is actually quite interesting, I spoke with a couple of men that actually were, witnessed casual sexism. And what was really interesting is when they shared these stories, I did ask them, so what did you do? What did you react? And then they looked blank at me and they said, oh, you're right, I didn't react. But they didn't realize until I told them. So they described, yes, a very sexist situation that they observed, but they forgot that they could have said something, that they had the opportunity to step in or to step up and say something, but they didn't. And it didn't even cross their mind. Yeah. So that's, this is also where it has to begin. For us, standing up for ourselves, and for not allowing certain situations, but also men who witness it, or anyone who's witnessing a sexist situation. And I also had interesting situations where women were being sexist against other women. And I can give you an example of someone who said they were in a conference call and they were waiting for a female colleague to join. And another female colleague said, oh, leave it, she's pregnant, she's going to be gone anyway, so we can just start the meeting without her. And she told me how shocked she was about that comment. And again, I said, so what did you do about it? And she said, oh, nothing. So, and it's also, this is what I like to, maybe the biggest takeaway for me is, like, we have to speak up. We have to say something when we hear this, and just telling the person, hey, why did you say that? Or what do you mean? Or what do you think it's appropriate to say something like that? So it's not confrontational, but sometimes if you ask the person to repeat or to explain what they just had done, then you give them the opportunity to realize and to stop and to think. It's like, yes, no, that was actually really inappropriate. And maybe this is going to break the cycle. Because currently everyone is allowing all the situations to happen. And this is what it's so dangerous, because this is going to, I don't know how many more centuries it's going to take until these things, until we eradicate it, if we don't start just, making this non-negotiable and stopping every time that it happens.
Yeah. That honestly, that example that you just gave, I think I've been on calls with that and also didn't say anything, and it didn't even click that this was a microaggression. And I will say that I've had women say to me, like when my kids were infants and I was leaving the office, when I had to report to an office and I would be leaving at 5:00, I would get the comment like, "Oh, lucky you." And I'm like, what are you talking about? What do you mean? Like, I worked all day. What do you mean, lucky me? Like, I'm leaving. It's 5:00. Like, but there was that little like snarky, like, "Oh, lucky you. You get to run out of here." And I'm like, I don't understand what you're.
It's so
I
passive
also work as
aggressive.
hard as you. I don't. It's like, and it's not. And to be honest, like I would then overcompensate. Like when my kids were little, I used to work until 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning every day. Like I would overcompensate because I would get comments like that. That was like, "Oh, you have to run to pick your kids up at daycare." It's like, yes, what? It's 6:00. Like I have to go. Like, it's crazy how deeply ingrained it is that even honestly, as you were giving examples, I'm embarrassed to say that I witnessed some of these things. I've had things said to me too. And I, like you said, just kind of brushed it off as like, well, it's just conversation. I think the whole, what did you mean by that, is a really powerful way to break in there and say like, and give that person the opportunity to realize like, oh, I probably shouldn't have made that comment. That remark isn't appropriate.
Yes, it's one sentence, just to confront them with their own words. It's like, excuse me, what do you mean? Or sometimes I said, what do you think this is an appropriate thing to say? When it's really, shockingly.
Yeah.
And then they, I don't know if they realize if that's going to change, but at least, you stop you break the cycle of just accepting it, probably. And this is what is the most dangerous thing, is like we have just accepted it as being part of our culture and our work life. And when you start, this is also what is very interesting, when you start becoming conscious of it, you hear it. This is where you start hearing it everywhere. And I'm really tuned to that. And I keep asking, I ask people all day long, what do they mean by that? Yes.
I think I'm going to start using that phrase more, because I've heard it before and I've never really employed it, but I think I will, because this is, it is ingrained, basically.
Yes, it is.
Catherine, I've had such a enjoyable conversation with you. I could probably talk to you for like 3 hours.
Likewise.
But I have to, it's like, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your experience and what you've gone through and where you are today. I'm super excited for the book launch. So please keep in touch. I want to know when it's launching. I want to be part of it, because I did, like, this is amazing. And, for all the listeners out there, we really hope that you found this informative. You can find Catherine. Catherine, I'm linked to you on LinkedIn, but if you have other social channels that you use, if you want to tell us your handles, and I can have the listeners follow you there as well.
Yeah, so I'm using primarily LinkedIn, to be honest with you, because I just cannot be everywhere. Yes, you can find me on Facebook and Instagram, Catherine Canales, I think .me. But the platform that I'm using the most is LinkedIn, because my community are working professionals, working women, and this is where I decided to concentrate. And otherwise, my website is nogap.world, because this is the world that I envision, a world that has no gaps, and all type of gaps, not only gaps when it comes to salaries or other gaps in society. So and if anyone has any questions or needs any support or advice when it comes to negotiating for that salary increase or promotion, don't hesitate to reach out to me.
Yeah, 100%. Catherine, I'll link. I'm gonna. So go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm fine. Thank you.
Oh, I'm going to link all of Catherine's information in the episode description. So when you are listening to the podcast, you can look below in the description. I'm going to link her LinkedIn profile there. Thank you all for listening so much. We greatly appreciate you, and we'll talk to you next time.